Week 3 was crazy. We had upsets and we had history. Upsets via the Texans and the Cardinals. History, of course, by the Miami Dolphins, putting up 70 points in an NFL game. Third most in NFL history. But we're here today. Episode 99, we're going to give you guys our updated top 10 teams ahead of Week 4 and some Week 3 players of the week. Should be tons of fun, but if you like sports podcast, this is going to be the channel for you. We drop 4 videos a week. 2 podcasts, 2 fantasy football episodes, all on route to 1,000 subs. So if you enjoyed at any point, support us down below. That's all we ask for. But without further ado, this is the Anomaly Podcast, episode 99, like I mentioned. Let's get into it. Alright, kicking off here with our pre-week 3 top 10. As we dropped this video last Tuesday, of course, every Tuesday will be our updated rankings. But starting off here at my top 5 is San Fran, Philly, Kansas City, Miami, and Dallas. Of course, this was before last week. 6 through 10 is the Baltimore Ravens, the Jacksonville Jags, the Detroit Lions, Bills, and Commanders. Commanders, obviously, I wanted to show them some love. A team like Atlanta maybe should have been in over them, or like a Tampa Bay. But I wanted to show the Commanders love because I didn't know how long I would be able to have them in the top 10, is my basic assessment there. But as we move forward, before we get into the updated top 10, some teams that fell out. The Jaguars, a team that I had as a top 5, top 6 team prior to the season, they just haven't looked sharp this year. The Commanders fell out. Of course, if you lose 37-3 and you barely made the rankings, you're going to fall out of it. So the Jags, Commanders fall out. Right outside of the rankings, we have the Seahawks, who have looked pretty good after week 1. And the Steelers. The Steelers have not looked pretty at all times, but they're starting to get some things going. Another team I could have had here was the Tampa Bay Bucks, or the Jags, or the Bengals, in all honesty. There's a couple different teams here, but some teams that are right outside mainly is the Seattle Seahawks. But without further ado, at number 10, we have the Green Bay Packers. It's as simple as this, folks. I told you 2 years ago over on my Instagram, and all my close friends can vouch for me. Jordan Love is the real deal. I said it was the perfect scenario for him. I have receipts if you need me to post them on here. At the time, that Jordan Love was going to be the second best quarterback in that draft class. That was, of course, behind Joe Burrow. Of course, also, I didn't know that Justin Herbert would be as good as he is. Regardless, Jordan Love is the real deal with his leadership, with his work ethic, with his playmaking ability. He's the guy for this Green Bay team. And this is a team that came back down 17 in the fourth quarter with a little over 10 minutes to go. They're my number 10 team, as they've shown a lot of promise early on in the year. At my number 9 spot, my fandom might get in the way here, but it's really the defense that gives me the Browns at my number 9 team, coming back onto the list, as 2 weeks ago, I believe, they were at my number 10 spot. Regardless, this week they're at number 9, and as a Browns fan, this team is refreshing, as because of this defense, I mean, Jim Schwartz, he gets all the credit here. But throughout 3 games this year, listen to these stats that I got here. We've allowed 1 touchdown, 491 total yards, which is the fewest yards allowed throughout 3 games since the 1999 Tampa Bay Bucks. That, of course, was a revolutionary defense with the Tampa 2 scheme. Regardless, we've also allowed 0 plays from the opposing team inside our own 10. We have the fewest first downs allowed at 21, as the league average is about 40. So we have about half of the first downs allowed than the rest of the league. It's hard to fathom, as you can hear, I can barely speak, that a Browns defense is doing this. As a Browns fan, not only have we had quarterback troubles, but we haven't been able to stop a flu, okay, over the last decade or so. So it's refreshing to have this good defense, and of course, a lot of this credit goes to Jim Schwartz. So shout out to Myles Garrett, shout out to Jim Schwartz. This entire defensive unit has looked great throughout the first couple weeks of the year. At my number 8 spot, I do have the Baltimore Ravens, and I'm not too sure about this ranking myself, but maybe it's just a feeling thing. Kind of when you watch them, you kind of feel they're better than the Browns as of right now. Plus, I wanted to set my fandom aside. Regardless, the Ravens, they let one slip away from them last week, quite literally, as they got sloppy late in the game last week against the Colts, as given the situations weren't the greatest, as players were literally slipping, sliding across the field. However, they had plenty of opportunity to win that game last week against the Colts, and they just couldn't finish the deal against the backup quarterback in Gardner Minshew. This team, I will say, still looks at their best when they are running behind Lamar Jackson, and this team is on the ground. That's been their bread and butter for a couple years now, we know that. But with Todd Monken coming in, we expected about a month of adjustment period on the field. But they should look a lot better next week than they did this week here against the Colts. At number 7, we have the Buffalo Bills. They got a commanding win this past week against the Commanders, no pun intended. But they've allowed like 13 total points the last 2 weeks. Granted, it was against the Raiders and the Commanders, but this Bills team has still looked dominant without their best defensive player there in Von Miller. Offensively, this team is starting to get things going, and they're starting to look like that Bills team we've known for years and years. My only worry with them is when it comes to the playoff time. But for right now, it's week 4, and they look like the number 7 best team here in the NFL. Shout out to Josh Allen, Josh McDermott. I still think this team needs another piece, and I wouldn't be shocked if they go after a Terry McLaurin or a Cooper Kupp here at the midseason mark. It all depends on how desperate, I guess, this team gets to make that final, I guess, to try and capitalize on the Super Bowl window is the point I'm getting at. At number 6, we have a team that dropped 1 spot, but maybe the best defense here in the NFL. The Dallas Cowboys, they dropped 1 spot after losing to a team that wants Caleb Williams more than wins. The Arizona Cardinals came in to, they were home, but they took care of business against the Cowboys. You know, watching that game, knowing that the Cardinals have blown 2 leads this season, we were all kind of like, okay, Cardinals are up 2 scores. The Cowboys, they're going to turn it on and they're going to come back and win this game. But that just never happened. The Cardinals and Josh Dobbs, they just looked like they had control of the game for the entirety of it, and they ended up winning that game by a score or 2. So shout out to the Cardinals for handling their business at home and proving us all wrong as far as how many games they would win this season en route to getting Caleb Williams. But I guess that shows you that players really don't care about tanking. It's all about the coaching staffs. Regardless, the Cowboys still look really good. They had an embarrassing loss last week. But when it comes down to it, I think the Cowboys have had a better start to the year than every team below them. So shout out to the Cowboys. Still number 6. So respectable, even though you had a very embarrassing loss last week against a team that really didn't want to win. Before we get into the second half of the top 10, I wanted to shout out today's sponsor, Life by Laura. This is a company that reached out to me about 2 months ago and said, hey, do you want a custom tumbler with your custom logo on it? I said, sure, why not? She sent that to me within a week, and I've been using it each and every day, from cold products to hot products. Great insulation inside the cup. If you want to see what that looks like, head over to my Instagram, at The Anomaly Podcast. I have a video for it, as it's really an amazing cup, to be honest with you. But Life by Laura does a lot of custom t-shirts, tumblers, crafts, and more. Halloween's right around the corner, and she has a lot of Halloween bags coming up, as well as some other Halloween projects. So if you want to discuss past projects or discuss future ideas with Life by Laura, go ahead and head over to her Facebook or Instagram, shoot her a DM, hit her with a follow, and I'm sure you guys can make something happen, make something special happen. But shout out to Life by Laura. She does a lot of amazing work, and I think she's going to continue to do so, no doubt in my mind. But again, shout out to her for today's sponsor. But without further ado, at number 5, we have the Detroit Lions jumping up 3 spots. As week 1, I was a little, I guess I limited my expectations for this team, as I had them at number 8. I think they were number 9 coming into the season for me, but I didn't want to jump them up yet. And then week 2 came around, and they kind of disappointed. A little shaky week there with the loss there, but week 3, they definitely bounced back. Week 3, they bounced back in a big way, and they're back in my top 5. As this is a Detroit Lions team that has looked amazing on both sides of the ball. I mean, last week people were saying that Atlanta was going to win that game because they could control the line of scrimmage, including myself. The Detroit Lions shut all those down very quickly. They went into they went into that game against Atlanta. They handled their business, looked good on both sides of the ball. And Amon-Ra, I mean, shout out to him. He had like 9 catches for 100+ yards on a hurt foot there, hurt toe more specifically. But the Detroit Lions have looked really good on both sides of the ball so far, and I think due to the Cowboys' loss last week, they're a top 5 team in the NFL now, and I'm comfortable with saying that after we have a little bit more of a body of work than just week 1 against the injured Chiefs team. At my number 4 spot, I have the Kansas City Chiefs, and I know you're asking me, Owen, how does a team that just looked as dominant as they did against the Bears, winning 40-10 or whatever the score was, how did they drop a spot? Well, of course, like I mentioned in the intro, the Dolphins happened. They dropped 70 points. So it's not more so that the Chiefs got worse. It's just when you have a historic performance like the Dolphins did, that warrants at least an uprise in the rankings. But the Chiefs, the story this year, at least the big story, has been one, getting your stars back, but two, the defense. The defense has looked really, really good this year. The offense, on the other hand, has been slowly, revving it up, trying to get back to where they were at the end of last season. Regardless, when they're at their best, I don't know if there's a team better, and that's simply put, it's Super Bowl worthy, right? But the Kansas City Chiefs at number 4, they're still a top 4 team, and honestly, if the Dolphins didn't have a 70-point week, they would still be in the top 3. The Chiefs, number 4, no doubt in my mind, still maybe the AFC favorite. At my number 3 spot, I think I kind of mentioned them there, but the Miami Dolphins, as this is a team that just put up 70 points. 70 points in any era screams a Super Bowl champion, Super Bowl contender at the very minimum. And they just did that. They did that for the third most points in NFL history. The Dolphins put up against the Broncos last week. And sure, the Dolphins need to shore up some things on that defensive side of the ball under Vic Fangio, but a lot of that's going to be fixed when a guy like Jalen Ramsey comes back. Please let's not forget the type of player that Jalen Ramsey is. He should be back here in a couple weeks, and this defense should look better. So if they can catch up at least a little bit to the offense, this team looks like it can really win the Super Bowl, as crazy as that might sound, because not a lot of people had the Dolphins as Super Bowl contenders prior to the season. But where are my flowers? Where are my flowers? Because I had them as a top 4 team coming into the season, and people called me crazy. Dolphins are a top 4 team, and they're playing like it so far this year. And not to mention, they now have a dynamic running back duo there with Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert. It's going to be interesting to see how this backfield plays, when a guy like Jeff Wilson comes back. They're going to have a 3-headed monster in their backfield, and not to mention all the weapons around Tua, who's a top 10 quarterback, by the way, going forward. But shout out to the Dolphins. They've looked really, really good this year, and I tried to tell you guys prior to the season. At number 2, we're going to have the Philadelphia Eagles, 3-0, of course, like the top 3 teams are. Top 4, actually. But the Eagles, this is a team that hasn't looked the best early on in the year. But even with that being said, they're still the most complete team in football. They still looked really, really good. They just haven't played at their highest level yet. And I will say, this year, they've had a couple rocky wins. They tried to give away week 1 to the Patriots, but the Patriots couldn't capitalize. Regardless, they've played really, really good complementary football around their quarterback. And again, the most complete team in football. So even if they play at 80%, they still might be better than you, given the roster. The Eagles, to me, number 2 team in the league, as I'm high on the Dolphins, but I can't see in a one-game scenario the Dolphins beating the Philadelphia Eagles. So for that reason, give me the Eagles at number 2. And at number 1, no shocker here, we're going to have the San Francisco 49ers. They took care of business in week 3 as they kind of dismantled the Giants. The Giants are coming in off a high, and now they're kind of back to a low after that week 1 game. But the San Francisco 49ers have took care of business week 1, 2, and 3. There has been no doubt in my mind they're the best team in football, at least after these first couple weeks. And the biggest question for this team coming into the year was the quarterback position. And Brock Purdy, sure, he's had his moments where he's looked kind of iffy, but overall he's looked like a really, really good quarterback. He runs that Shanahan scheme the way he wants it to be run, and this team has been clicking on all cylinders so far this year. Brandon Ayuk, he's going to be coming back this week, or next week, So this is, it's going to take a lot off of Purdy going forward, and this team should look even better. Not to mention Christian McCaffrey has looked like the best back in football. Defensively, it also might be the most talented unit. This Niners team has everything. We know this already, and they're the number 1 team back-to-back weeks. No shocker there. But overall, top 10 has stayed relatively the same. A lot of shuffling around from 3 to 10. But number 1 and number 2, it's going to take a lot to take one of those teams down. Maybe another 70-point performance from the Dolphins, and they shoot up to number 1. But that is my updated top 10 ahead of week 4. Let me know down below what you think. Of course, we're not always going to agree on every little spot. But overall, the idea of it is that, I want to see your guys' thoughts. Maybe drop your top 10 down below in the comments. But before we get out of here, I wanted to give you guys our players of the week. Week 3 player of the week, no doubt in my mind, is Devon Achane. historical performance from the Dolphins, but also Devon Achane, as he had 243 total yards, 200 plus on the ground. He averaged 11 yards a touch, a first down a touch. That is absolutely insane numbers. He had 4 total touchdowns, of course, as we know, a lot of big touchdowns, a lot of long touchdowns, excuse me. And I really wanted to give him the player of the week because he had this historical performance. And let's not forget, he did not play week 1. So as a rookie, this is his second career game, and he put up these numbers. I mean, in fantasy football, this is the 3rd highest outing by any player in fantasy football history. And he did that in his second career game. That really, I want to point that out there because that's not easy to play at the professional level. We know this. But in your second career game, is absolutely insane. He's the player of the week. But some honorable mentions here if we want to throw them out there. Of course, Tua and Tyreek had really good weeks in their own right. But Raheem Mostert, a guy that had 4 touchdowns, 140-something yards, and 7 receptions. So Raheem Mostert had a really good day as well. Of course, he was on my fantasy bench. Keenan Allen had 18 receptions for 125 yards. 18 receptions is insane. And Keenan Allen, even at his older age, is putting in some work there for the Los Angeles Chargers. Taylor Swift, you're like, hey, Taylor Swift's that's a singer. That's a performer. That's not even a player. Taylor Swift is a player of the week. I mean, she was in the market. She was on TV more than some players this week, as she is, in fact, dating Travis Kelce, and she was, in fact, at the Chiefs game. If you guys didn't know, or if you haven't been on your phone for the last week, she was at the Chiefs game, and it's kind of crazy. I mean, I saw a stat this morning that said Travis Kelce jerseys, so they skyrocketed 400% as far as sales after the fact that Taylor Swift was there for the game. Absolutely insane, but I guess shout out to them for their newly relationship. Regardless, back to actual football players. Tank Dell, 5 receptions, 145 yards, and a touchdown. Can't get much better than that, especially in your 3rd career game. But Tank Dell, he really looks like the front runner now in this offense for C.J. Stroud. Who knows? Nico Collins has looked dominant so far, but this is a very fun Houston Texans team. Shout out to them for getting their first win on the year. Some honorable mentions. Sam Laporta with his breakout game. Jerome Ford in his first career start for the Browns. He looked really, really good. A pair of touchdowns there against a stingy Titans defense. Lamar Jackson in his own right, despite the loss, looked pretty good. And Jordan Love in the second half comeback there. I guess 4th quarter comeback against the Saints. These are all guys that looked really, really good. I mean, if we want to throw in Matt Gay there, he's another guy we can talk about. But that is going to do it for Offensive Players of the Week. Let's shift over to the defensive side of things, as I'm going to give this award to Myles Garrett. 3.5 sacks, 5 quarterback hits, 5 tackles, and a forced fumble. I didn't fit it on the graphic, but it was his highest graded game in PFF history, I guess, for Myles Garrett. So it was his best statistical game ever, I guess, according to PFF. So shout out to Myles Garrett. I mean, he looked really, really good. Of course, most of us have seen the viral clip, but if you haven't, Myles Garrett in that 3rd quarter was going back and forth from the left side to the right side, and just like a shift on the defensive side of things. And he had 2 tight ends for the Titans following him to both sides of the line of scrimmage. Absolutely insane when you have that much gravity on the field. But Myles Garrett's amazing week. He's been the leader of this, I guess, great Browns defense, which is still foreign to say. But he had a really, really good week, and hopefully I never have to update this graphic. Hopefully he can just put these stats up each and every week, and the Browns can continue to be dominant. Regardless, some honorable mentions are the entire 49ers defensive line. PFF had them. He had Eric Armstead, Javon Hargrave, and Nick Bosa all as some of the highest rated defensive linemen on the week. So just shout out to the entire 49ers defensive line. And then Matt Gay, I mentioned him for the offensive side of things, but defense, special teams kind of they kind of coincide there. And Matt Gay, I mean, he had a really, really good week there against the Ravens, and he single-handedly beat the Ravens based off of his scoring output. But without further ado, that is going to do it for today's show. Again, this might be the shortest podcast in the history of this show. But when we get, straight to the point, just get in and out like a gas station, that's just what's going to happen here, as that's been the MO of this channel, to get in and out as quickly as possible, give you guys the information you need, or I guess, you know, the visuals that you need to get through the episode. But that is going to do it for today's show. I'll be back Thursday for the episode 100, the 100th episode of this podcast. If you've caught any episode, or if this is your first episode, support us down below. That's all we ask for. If you enjoyed it, you know, drop a like, subscribe to the channel, all of that good stuff, as we have a lot of work to do for Thursday, and that's kind of why I'm ending this one short. Hopefully you guys can understand, you know, obviously. But we got the point across today. We gave you guys our players of the week, our top 10 teams in the league ahead of week 4. But until tomorrow, where we drop some fantasy football content, and then, of course, on Thursday, we have our 100th episode. I mean, that's really going to do it for today's show. We'll see you guys tomorrow for fantasy football. Until then, stay happy, stay healthy. We're out of here.